Hello everyone, the lights have gone down, it's like the movies. I'm going to start a presentation. So my name is James Coons, I work for FBM, which is a private planning and architecture firm in Halifax. We've been contracted by the municipality to do some work on the growth plan. And today we're going to talk about what the growth plan is and why the municipality is developing one. Provide some details on the upcoming work that's going to be a part of this plan, as well as what the upcoming public engagement sessions are going to be. And then after the presentation, we have poster boards at the back of the room, and really we're just looking to have conversations with you and learn about your experience in East Chester or kind of other parts of the municipality that you're from, and what the issues you see around housing and growth are. And then we're going to record and listen to that feedback. Thank you so much for coming again on such short notice. It would have been great to fill all these seats, and maybe we'll have some more people tonight, but we are coming back for more sessions, so I'm sure that proper notice, more people have been able to make it out. But even still, I appreciate being able to have, with a smaller crowd, you get to have more in-depth conversations. So you're kind of like a little focus group right now, and that's great. So I'm looking forward to kind of learning what your perspectives are in particular. So charting a course for growth, which is the name for the Municipality Chester Growth Plan, was initiated by Council in February 2023. And that was to address three main issues, which were that there's a delayed home ownership for young families. It's getting more expensive to buy homes in the municipality, especially with interest rates being higher. That a high percentage of household income was being spent on housing, whether it's between mortgage payments or rental. And that those two issues, number 1 and 2, were limiting the economic growth and labor supply in the municipality. So a lot of businesses were having a hard time recruiting people, and a lot of workers can't afford to live in places near their sources of work. So there's 7 components to the growth plan. It's quite an extensive plan, and essentially it's made up of 7 individual studies. The first one is the housing infrastructure plan, or planning, which was specifically looking at sewer and water service through the municipality. So the work that's come out of that so far is we'll talk about it on a later slide, but areas with existing sewer service, some of them are being considered for expansions to that service, and I'll go into more detail about what those are later on. Another component is public engagement, and so we're at FBM, we're doing only a few of these components. So the infrastructure planning, that's largely done with that sewer infrastructure expansion plans. We're handling some of the public engagement, so we'll be coming back in October and November. We're also doing a big portion of this work is population and workforce projections, and some of that I'll go through today. Essentially looking at what does the future for the municipality have based on recent trends and historic trends. And another component is the workforce attraction and retention plan. So how do we make sure that there's enough labor supply in the municipality to help support local businesses? And the last portion is the housing policy review, which is essentially what can we do to help us, one of the gentlemen over here said earlier, make it easier for people to build housing in the municipality and provide housing supply that is really needed when we're at such a shortage of housing compared to the demand. So there's 2 other components, the recreation needs assessment and the transportation infrastructure review, that are all kind of integral components of a growing community. Those are not being done by FBM, and it's going to be done internally, as I understand it, with those respective departments. And so that's all I have about those 2 right now. So hopping into some of the work that we've done on population projections, there's a lot of stuff going on here, so I'll kind of walk through it. Essentially, like most of rural Nova Scotia, Chester had been declining in population for decades. If you look at Digby or Yarmouth or Cape Breton, a lot of places have been kind of slowly getting a bit older and losing a lot of young people to immigration. That, for the first time, that changed, and it changed for a lot of municipalities in the province, was between 2016 to 2021. So COVID was essentially a bit of a bump. We saw people deciding to move back to rural Nova Scotia, some people for retiring, some people for remote work opportunities. And then, while we're between census periods right now, the next census won't be out until 2026, there is an annual population estimate that gives kind of a midway progress that we can know what's going on between them. And in 2023, the population estimate for the municipality was 11,500. So that's almost 1,000 people more than there were in 2021. And that's a big departure from really the past number of decades, probably since, I have to go back a long time to see when Chester was really growing as a community. So based on those trends, what we've worked on is 3 different population projections that none of them are saying which is more likely. It's just to say what happens if A, B, or C. So on the low end, and these are projected out to 2046. So on the low end, the first scenario is what happens if essentially from 2016 to 2023 was just an anomaly and we're going to go back to the way things were circa 2011 or earlier, and that was going back to a declining aging population. So that basically we bumped up and we start going back to a relative decline, and we're about where we are today by 2046. The mid scenario, actually I'll skip the high scenario. The high scenario is what if the most recent population growth continues? So that's between 2021 and 2023. So that essentially 500 people per year, proportionally, is this exponential growth. So by 2046, we're at almost 18,000 people, which is nearly double what the population is today. And then the mid scenario is kind of a halfway point between those two, recognizing that we're probably not, there's a good chance that we won't continue growing as high as it has been, but it's also unlikely that we'll go back to the way things were before 2016.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
These projections, are they year-round residents or?
It's based on census data. So I'd have to think about who responds to census. I believe it's only residents who respond to the census. Although it depends on, usually the census is done, I think in June. I'd have to check on that. It's a good question.
Because we have so many non-year-round residents. I mean, we're going to have houses built regardless.
Yeah.
Around here, half of houses being built, maybe more than half of people that don't live here year-round.
Right. And that's a very important component. It's true, and it's something that needs to be considered, especially with a municipality like Chester. One thing we also heard anecdotally, though, is also that a lot of people who used to come seasonally for cottages end up staying year-round, selling their home in the city. Maybe that's not everyone, but it is, trends are changing as well. And I think, despite that there is a large component of people who are temporary residents, there also are probably the vast majority are people who are here year-round, especially outside of the village. And one thing I want to look at here is, so this is the 2006 age pyramid for the municipality of Chester. So we're back all the way to 2006, and as you can see, between the ages, so this is, you probably can't see this area here is the age of people that are between about 40 to 60 in 2006. And at that point, 18.6% of the population was aged 65 and over. When we fast forward to 2021, this orange is where we were in 2006, and we've updated the chart to show, based on the 2021 census, 30.6% of the population was aged 65 and over. This age group here is going to keep moving up, and really regardless of, it'll be very difficult to overcome that with population immigration or immigration. And by 2031, the projection is showing that about 42.5% of the population is going to be aged 65 and over. So this is not a unique situation to the municipality. It's across Canada, really, and especially in rural parts of the country. But it does create a challenge for workforce projections and making sure that we have enough labor supply to support an aging population. So these are the two kind of the same scenario between high, medium, low as they were in the last projection, but now we're looking at the percentage of the population that's aged between 15 and 64, which is most people's working career. And as we can see, we've actually, since 2006, declined in workforce supply, even as the population increased in 2016. And while we are in the high scenario increasing the labor supply based on immigration, proportional to the amount of population growth that we're going to have, we're actually declining in proportionally the size of the labor force. So one reason why the municipality needs to work on a workforce attraction and retention plan is to kind of shift this, because the municipality really needs to attract younger people to help support the local economy, to make sure businesses can keep providing the services they do for the municipality and for the people who live here. So part of that is making sure that housing is affordable and that there's places for people to live. Because young families right now, as we kind of went back to the beginning of this, are having a hard time affording housing here. And we look at, I don't have it in this presentation, but the people most likely to leave the municipality at any age, it's usually between 20 to 24, and a lot of people, young people leave. And being able to bring them back after they finish school, because with affordable housing, will be really helpful in making sure there's a healthy labor supply in the municipality. So what the growth plan is looking at, and this is somewhat across 2 different initiatives. So the first one is proposing sewer expansion to Mill Cove, Otter Point, Chester Basin, New Ross, and kind of Chester Periphery, and really that's the Stanford Lake Road area. So those areas are being considered for wastewater expansion, so that essentially it can support more housing. And the way that the type of housing we're looking at for these areas is medium and low density, what people kind of refer to as missing middle housing. And then for kind of future long-term growth, exits 6, 7, and 9 are being looked at along Highway 103 as potential areas that can handle maybe more intensive growth. And so none of that is locked in stone or anything like that. Really the work that FBM is doing this background research to say under these different scenarios, how many new houses would we need, and what types of housing do people need for workers, for retirees, and then let's think about how much land we need for that, because under the high scenario, we're projected to need about 2,000 more houses by 2072, and houses, let's say units, if those are all single-family homes, that is a big, big subdivision. If it's a mixture of single-family homes and some low-rise apartments and maybe a few medium-rise apartments, we can end up being a lot more, let's say, thoughtful with how we plan the municipality and make sure we can address things like service provision, transportation, and kind of have a controlled growth that is meanwhile attracting the labor force and supporting the needs of people in the municipality. So as part of the work that we are doing, FBM is doing, we are reviewing essentially the planning policy and the land use bylaws that are in these areas with potential sewer service expansion. And we're going to be looking at what are the barriers to people developing in these areas, and are the bylaws suitable for attracting the type of housing that the municipality needs. And then the part of the work that we're doing on the population projections is going to support the municipality in doing their long-term planning for exits 6, 7, and 9 for a more comprehensive type of planning. And I believe that a big component of that would be kind of back to that first element, which is infrastructure work. I believe those areas are, because they're having a higher density, they'll be considered for sewer service and maybe water service, but I think that's depending on kind of the infrastructure studies and what's really available and how practical that is. So for the project timeline, I got some, last time someone said that's a very short timeline, and there are more things that are going to appear on the slide. So September is where we are right now, so we're doing our first engagement, and the reason for this engagement was really just to tell people what the growth plan is, give people a sense of the scope of the challenge the municipality is facing when it comes to an aging population and a growing population. In October, we're coming back for a second engagement, and that's where we're going to be talking more about, okay, so here are these population projections, what does that mean in terms of the demand for housing? And we'll be coming back with an update to the workforce attraction and retention plan, who my colleague is working on. And we'll also have some draft policies for growth management. So that's policy versus regulation. Policy is kind of your high-level vision, and it kind of creates the framework that you can base regulation on. So in October, we're going to come back with some, essentially the vision for how we see growth in these areas that we're talking about. And then in November, we'll come back with something more tangible, which is what are these actual regulations going to be, and we can talk to people about, what do you feel about this? Is this scary, having this in your neighborhood? Do you think this isn't going far enough to attract the type of investment into housing that's needed? And finally, in December, we'll have a final report and recommendations that we'll give to the municipality about essentially how to manage growth in the municipality, which was based on the research we conducted and the public engagement that we had done. So that's the end of my presentation here. So my colleague over here, Rio, we're going to kind of float around the back with these poster boards, and really we just want to have a conversation and talk to you all about what you feel and what your kind of feedback is to this presentation and the content on the boards back there.